August 30, 1985. I have no memory of these photos. I would later suffer amnesia in a car accident, and some memories have still never returned. I don't know where this place was, but it was likely to have been the Keystone Civic Center on Gunn Highway. I see I am wearing a beeper, so I was doing real estate with Don by then. Hurricane Elena was initially projected to strike the central Gulf Coast, but unexpectedly veered toward the east on August 30th, stalling just 50 miles west of Cedar Key, Florida. Despite predictions that Elena would continue eastward across Florida, the cyclone retrograded westward, ultimately making landfall near Biloxi, Mississippi on September 2 as a Category 3 hurricane. I was living at 11306 Castleberry Road in Odessa, Florida at the time, and the flooding had me in fear for the lives of my Himalayan and Persian show cats. In between cracks of lightning and thunder, I ran back and forth between my house and the cattery behind it to make sure they weren't taking on water. Speaking of Cedar Key, I'm adding this paragraph from the future, and I'm not sure of the year, but it would have been somewhere around this 1985 time. It was Don's first plane crash. Because Don had lost his pilot's license the same day he got it by doing touch and go at the closed Vandenberg Airport, he would fly under the radar, which is about 200 feet. He liked to fly over the Gulf because there weren't as many updrafts and downdrafts as there are over buildings in uneven terrain. That made for smoother flying, and at this lower altitude, it could mean a lot to avoid a strong wind shear. He was out over the Gulf and running out of fuel on his way back to Tampa when he decided to land at the Cedar Key Airport. On final approach, he ended up in the water. He would never admit it, but I think he just ran out of gas. He blamed the plane. He was incensed that it was becoming news, but how could it not? This is what I remember people saying about it. There were boats in the area that saw the plane go into the water, and they started heading toward the scene. One of the boaters described it as being one of the most bizarre things he had ever seen, as the pilot had apparently felt that saving his briefcase was of the utmost concern, and by the time the boater arrived, Don was standing on the last bit of sinking plane, holding up his briefcase. Don paid the boaters, who had all gathered around by now, to tow the plane back to shore because he didn't want any evidence of it having been there. I don't know how he managed to get the wreckage out of the shallows, but he had access to cranes and his trucking company, so it wouldn't have been too hard for him. Meanwhile, following up on a entry from yesterday that I did, I had put those images, the pictures of the images, out to Facebook and asked if anybody knew anything about them, because Jamie took them to one of those roadshow antique dealers, and they had told her that it was not an authentic carving because of the stone, and that it was something that was frequently made for tourists. And I said, tourists where? What were they imitating? I've never seen this. I had put it on a Google search to see if Google had anything like that based on the images, and couldn't find anything that matched it. So I put it out to the great people on Facebook, and my fans have been just amazing. Thank you, everybody who started researching that. The general consensus is that it is Mayan in its design, and that it was probably just poured concrete. Since Jamie had said that the stone wasn't right, I don't know what kind of stone it is, but and I don't know what kind of stone it would have been to be on a slave ship. So I don't know whether the guy who brought it to us had thought, well, this would be a great way to pawn it and get some money, and that's why he never came back, or if he was actually out there doing some kind of discovery for salvaging a shipwreck, and some tourist had thrown the thing overboard because they didn't want it, and it ended up near some wreckage. So I have no idea what the original origin was of that piece of Mayan styled art, but it is a very cool looking piece of art, and I do still love that we have this very mysterious story.